What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan. Today, we're here with Erik Newton. He's the VP of Marketing at Milestone Inc. And this guy is here to rock the mic. I'm really excited today because we're going to be talking about building a community through SEO. And he's going to be sharing something. And this was something I was so excited when he posted this as his topic was why your business content is never going to go viral. Hugely important topic. I think this is going to be a really big eye-opening experience for a lot of you. So Erik, say what's up to everybody and we'll hop in.
What's up? Good to be here, Josh.
Yeah, super excited to have you here. So Erik, I want to ask you, I honestly think we ought to just start off with that question, which is, why business content isn't going viral? And I'm going to preface this by saying every single person I work with in the business space is like waiting for that post to hit millions and millions of people when they have a following of 1,000,
Yeah.
and it's hard to explain why it won't work. So I'd like to hear your take on it.
Yeah, it's difficult to achieve, but it's even more difficult for people in the B2B space who are promoting a business solution. But the most likely reason why your content won't go viral, particularly when it's coming from a sole proprietor or a business, is because you're going to pitch yourself and your products. You're going to put your pitch into your content, and that's not the best kind of content. The best kind of content is something that's authentic and emotionally engaging, that people are going to feel good about sharing with their audience. So those are the first two reasons, and this is all part of the content conundrum. And the content conundrum is that this is a very substantial research of over 1 billion URLs that found that 90+% of all of those URLs had no audience from Google, which for the most part means they had almost no audience whatsoever. Google standard search, SEO, and Google local, if you exclude direct, which is a channel you can't really control, if you take that out of the equation, it's 67% of the traffic that comes to a website comes via Google search and Google local. And that's for a location-based business. For a B2B business, it can be higher because those B2B businesses are more information intensive, and they tend to have more long tail content that can get picked up, and they tend to spend less on media. Like if you don't spend millions of dollars on media, almost all of your traffic's coming from SEO and SEO local and referral and social, roughly in that order.
Right. And I mean, it's so awesome to see that, because what most people don't realize is that they're putting up all of this content, doing all of this stuff, maybe some people spending tens of thousands of dollars a month producing content when they really shouldn't be focusing on that. Like what you talk about is saying, hey, instead of making more content, bring more of an audience to the existing content that you have. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. It's definitely more satisfying. There, in the HubSpot era of about 5-6 years ago, this model of jamming up the cadence to 2 a week, 3 a week, 4 a week, of whether you're doing blogs or videos or podcasts, that if you produce more content, you have a bigger body of content, you have more chances in some ways, but it's somewhat exhausting, as a producer, whether you're the producer, the writer, or the designer, it's a lot of work. And what we really like is to create content that has a ready audience because it solves a problem. There's a need out there, and we do our research either in the traditional way we do research by talking to customers and talking to prospects, or we do research using online tools that give you an idea of what is the query volume for some of these queries, what we call the head terms, the mid terms, and the long tail terms. And right, creating that content is if we can take the content we have, and you don't want to go into the oldest content, like 10-year-old content's probably going to be a problem, but among your fresher content from the last couple of years, what can you do to make, let's say you've got a 100-page blog and you've got 50 videos, in your case, you've got hundreds of podcasts. What can you do to make it come to life? Well, let's talk about the podcast. And I think I think you're a good marketer, and I think you probably do a lot of these things. So you could probably tell the audience, first of all, you're creating audio, and which is somewhat unusual among podcasters, is you're creating video too. So you've got two mediums. Then you're going to create a text version, like you're going to promote something with this. Then you can do a still version where you do images that are good for social. And the more you cover the asset types, the more opportunities you get in the Google search, because Google is sort of stratifying the SERPs and the search engine results pages where people see those results, and they're putting video at the top and they're putting images at the top, and they do a quick answer at the top, and then they do people also ask. And if you can satisfy all that, here's one more that you might not be using yet, Josh, and that is to add FAQs, right? What are people asking? What questions did I ask Erik? What questions is Erik capable of answering? Because for Google, every search query is a question, and every answer is one of the search results. So when you do FAQs in a robust way, like you think of 10 or 15 FAQs to add to a page, Google looks at that and it understands your page a little bit better. So you create FAQ, you create a question, you create an answer, and then you mark it up with something called schema markup, which is something Milestone is expert at. And the schema markup gives Google all these indicators of where's the question, start and stop, where's the answer, and how do these questions interrelate, and the links and so forth.
Right, and that's the, first off, thank you for those facts. I love that. Those are little hacks that people could use right now to increase their SEO. And what I love what you're talking about, and I want to ask a follow-up question with this, because you're saying that basically when you do a long form piece of content, let's just say a blog for all intents and purposes, if you were to put video, audio, images, everything, written content all into one post, would that increase the SEO, or are you saying that would detract from the SEO?
Yeah, that Google likes that. Google understands these things as components. So as the producer, you're producing four asset types, but you're combining them. And Google understands that these are things that are related, that these are rich media assets that are a great experience for people. It knows which of its users are using a mobile phone, watching video, and what speed connectors, what speed bandwidth connection they have. And it'll customize and promote those things. So you're absolutely on the right track there, Josh, that the richer the media, the richer the post in terms of video, images. Original images are better than stock images. I know as marketers, it's easy to go download, but if you could photograph these things, Google knows that that's an original image. It knows it hasn't seen it before, and it knows that's a picture of a guy doing a podcast. That's the podcast mechanics. That's the marketing of the content conundrum. And that's one of the reasons why infographics do really well. I don't know if you've ever noticed, when you make an infographic, it's pretty easy to rank because infographics are hard to make. They take hours and hours of design. And if for how we're all trained in school, it's a little bit easier to just write a piece that's about 1,000 words, and that's a blog. But you do want to add everything you mentioned and infographics. And you know what else is a trick? It's a little bit harder for people, and they might need some support from an Upwork type programmer, is interactive content, like an ROI calculator. And I made some ROI calculators 5-6 years ago, and I still ranked first for those. Volume's not really high, but you rank first. And if as a human, you're walking through a human-based sales process, let me pull up my ROI calculator. Oh, we rank first for that, SEO ROI calculator, or FAQ. I do an FAQ estimator, like how much benefit could I get from adding a lot of FAQs to a 200-page site? So that's interactive. That's kind of at the somewhat more extreme end because you need a little bit of programming help usually to do that as a marketer.
Yeah, and that's where I love. There's agencies like you guys, Milestone, where you're there to help. I think it's called schema. You said, right? Schema,
yeah, that's right.
Schema tagging, everything. All of those things are just so. They're next level. Are things that you really can't just sit down and do yourself if you're trying to produce your own content. And I want to throw in a caveat here for a lot of you who are listening to this, because a lot of people, when they enter the marketing game, especially as a digital entrepreneur, they feel like, okay, I need to be everywhere. But the one thing that I can say wins out every single time is the SEO. It always wins. And over your social media content, all these other things, it's well worth the time to just make posts like this, because you'll get consistent traffic. That's how we've grown our show, is through SEO.
That's great. Yeah, it's true. So as I said before, the majority, if the traffic as a channel, the percent of traffic for almost all websites, and your audience can go and look in Google Analytics and they can see this distribution by the percentages. I take out direct, but I account for SEO and local and referral. And then you can see paid and all these things you've tagged up in there. And SEO is gigantic. SEO is about 10 times bigger than social. If you're getting 5% of your traffic from social, you're doing pretty well. It's a lot of work to get if you got, let's say you've got, 5,000 visitors a month, and, if you're getting 250, 300, 400, 500 people to click through, not just read your social content, that's great. and then Google will be 10 times bigger than that. And if you're a local business, a third of 67%, like 22 points of that traffic will be coming in on the local 3-pack and the map and so forth. So it's really important for location-based business, people that have a physical location, to go to Google My Business and fill out 25, 28 different fields. And then the other thing is consistency. This is an older tactic, but you want your name, address, and place, your NAP, to be really consistent. And if you're particularly rebranding, you don't want to confuse Google and have your name be synonymatic with another company's name. And you want to differentiate it with like Milestone Inc. We updated that in years ago, and now that's the consistent way we're treating in local. And then that connects to reviews. And I don't know if your audience is in the reviews game, but
most of them aren't, but I used to be, and I know definitely that's a beast in and of itself.
it's a lot of work. I'd rather work on SEO than reviews. They're both important, and reviews supports SEO, but SEO is the master channel in which that traffic is going to be coming through to your website.
Well, and I do want to ask this because, let's turn it on the digital entrepreneur, right? And say, okay, they can't really use a map pack, right? They're not really,
Yeah.
you could, but it'd be kind of inefficient unless you found some really cool way to do it.
Sometimes for candidates, if you're
Right.
recruiting people, come to the office and stuff, people need to know where the office is and needs to be done. It needs to be clear, but it's not
Right.
going to drive customers and prospects in if it's not a retail store.
Yeah, and not in the same way. Yeah, if it was a retail store. So as a digital entrepreneur, and I'm going to give you kind of this as a digital entrepreneur who has a podcast as one of the forms of their marketing. Where would they start when it came to SEO? How would they use the podcast and the SEO to actually grow their business?
Yeah. Okay. So the right place to start. So if we're going to build a building, we're going to start with the architecture and the engineering plan, right? We're going to the wiring, the plumbing, the foundation. We want this building to not fall down after we build 3 stories of it. So what does that mean? That means you get a good host and it's really fast, that the pages load fast, and that you build in, what we're recommending is you build in schema markups, you build in a navigation and a digital experience, and you're very careful and you think about mobile. It's really easy for us when we work at desks to look at our world from the desktop or the laptop. But do you check your site on mobile, Josh? Do you go in and see how's it going and how's it loading?
Never. I don't touch that at all.
Yeah, mobile is Google's preferred platform. So if you're really good on desktop and really bad on mobile, you're going to get penalized, essentially, or you get rewarded for being good on mobile. So get your mobile experience right, get your speed right. Josh, on a mobile page, when the content moves around a little bit, like something like a pop-up, or even though it's part of the website, it's not necessarily an ad, and you go to touch it and you touch the wrong thing and it loads the wrong thing. That's called content layout shift. And Google is now penalizing that because it's a crappy user experience. And it doesn't remember, Google is referring its friends and its users to you. And if your site, if they're bouncing back and having a crappy experience, then Google doesn't want to send you more traffic. So where do we start with SEO? Have a great digital experience. And Google doesn't want you to get too deep into this technique or that technique, because the algorithm updates and changes every 3 or 4 months. And create the right digital experience, good content, helpful content. It's content that answers questions, that is questions and answers. It loves that. It loves rich media. Put all those things together and make it optimized to perform really, really fast on mobile. And that's the right place to start. Now, once you lay that foundation, because if you're using a contractor, if you're a small company, if you're using an agency, Milestone has a CMS platform that's SEO first. So we built this platform 10 years ago, because the market didn't offer all of this SEO built in. So we built it for us, and then we realized, well, other people would like to use this, even if they're not using all of our whole suite of services. So then on top of that, then you create this kind of content that is helpful and relevant and useful. And there's an acronym in SEO that I don't know if you're familiar with, Josh. It's called EAT. EAT, expertise, authority, and trust. So if you are a PhD, make sure that's on your website. If you're an MD, whatever if you're selling supplements and you have some authority and you've done research, you want to show that, because Google cares a lot about veracity and accuracy and truth and value. So Your authority, your expertise could come from your education or your work experience, and you want to feature your thought leaders on your executive page. And I've done that. If you looked at our website, I've done that by most of our executives have a speaker page on which we showcase what they talk about, what they know, what they've done on from podcasts to speaking in live events. That's expertise. Authority is that you have a body of knowledge, that you have enough, that it's not some kind of it's not just like a one-off or a two-off blog post, that you really are deep on this topic that you talk about. We talk about SEO a lot. We talk about local a lot. We talk about social a lot. So Google believes we have that authority. And then trust is this traditional Google metric of like, what does the community think of you in terms of reviews and backlinks? And you want other people to link to you, but you don't want to game that system either. Google hates that. So what you want to do is just do everything right, create a good, fast user experience with great, helpful content like you're creating. Hopefully right now, Josh, hopefully this is a piece that the audience and Google both like.
So we'll see how well it ranks, right? And one of the things that stood out to me, and so what you're saying is like you can basically use, I mean, your goal is to just answer questions that are being asked. Yes. I mean, that's the whole point of search, right? Is just yes. answering those questions. And yes. if the content is doing that, then I mean, Google's going to rank you. And what yes. I love about your strategy is you're not using these gray hat, black hat tactics, whatever, trying to just game the system, because every time somebody does that, it's short-lived. Yeah. Because Google's job is to make their algorithm so good that you can't use any weird strategy. They're trying to give the best result. So just be the best result. I've never understood why people try to game that.
Yeah, there years ago that you could get some serious gains that would hold for months or quarters. And now with artificial intelligence and machine learning, Google is understanding the context and the content. And Google knows which is the better piece. Google knows which one's better written. Google knows which one's better laid out. Google knows which navigation is better. So it's getting more and more human-like. So you're right. And that's what Google wants. They don't want to, most of these algo changes, they don't telegraph to us. They did telegraph a couple of the big ones like mobile first and this page speed and this experience. They gave us the metrics and said, this is coming in about 6 or 9 months, get ready. And what we saw at Milestone is that 2 or 3 months before the change date for this page experience and speed, only 5% of websites and pages were qualifying. And then we retested, and now it's 21%. About 2 months after this change, 21% of the sites are good, fast, and stable, and providing that good experience.
Yeah, and it's good to see the market shift that way for sure. But it's that's those other 80% who are sitting here going, "Why isn't my site working?"
Well, have you gone to your site on mobile and seen that it takes 12 seconds to load?
Yeah,
nobody likes that.
Yeah, especially me. I love that. Well, and so let me ask you this, Erik, because we are coming up to the end of the interview here, but where would you send people if they wanted to start leveraging good content? Like, where should they go and search you and your content?
Well, they can, if they're interested in my book and some of my personal ideas, they can go to Amazon and look for Hack the Corporate Fast Track. If they're interested in schema markup and FAQ manager, they can go to milestoneinternet.com and look at the product section. And I put a lot of resources up. I've done a lot of research. Since I've joined Milestone 18 months ago, I've published 9 research reports that have some of the data that we're discussing, some of the benchmarks. And it helps in particular for companies where you've got to make the case to an owner or an executive that like, this is a good opportunity for us. So those resources, and I think for me as a data person, as an analytical person, seeing a statistic like 90% of content doesn't have an audience from Google, or 80% of 79% of these web pages are not really providing the right experience, it helps give you the wherewithal to go and fix those problems for your users.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what's the name of the book again?
Hack the Corporate Fast Track on Amazon.
So make sure you go check that out, or go to milestoneinternet.com. Is that correct?
That's right. Thanks,
Perfect.
Josh.
So make sure you guys go check that out, because honestly, if you're needing help with that kind of content, getting, like you said, schema mapping, I can never remember how to say
schema
that.
Markup.
Schema markup. Thank you.
Yeah.
But you'll be able to go check it out over at milestoneinternet.com. So, Erik, just to wrap up the interview with one little bow, if you could give us one final parting piece of guidance, what would it be?
Something that took me a long, long time and a couple decades into my career is empathy. Is what does empathy mean? And I train young people. I say the sooner you can understand this in your life and in your career, the more it's going to help you advance and deal with all kinds of relationships, from your boss to your personal relationships, your family. And empathy, what it means is that you care about the other person, and you care about what the other person needs and wants, and you align what you give to the world, you align it to them after you understand them. And rather than just coming like, I do all these things, like if I just started with schema markup without giving you and the audience more context, it's kind of like, oh, it's code. It's kind of a bummer, but like, you tell me about the audience. I listened to some of your other podcasts, and I got a feel for your style. And I bring a story to you that I think supports what you're doing. And as we're talking, you're good at SEO, but I see an opportunity to give you another idea. And I saw you write some of those things down. And that's being empathetic. And as a marketer, and all business is marketing, sales is marketing, marketing is sales. It's the same thing in a small, medium, and large business, that we're appealing to customers to come do business with us, or stay with us, or buy more from us. And to do that, people have to know that you care about them. And it's not an easy thing to teach. It's not an easy thing to package, but ask yourself, what's the right thing to do for the customer? And this is something, we're pushing here at Milestone in my group right now. Just like, don't worry about the politics of any of this stuff. Just what's the right thing to do for the customer? What would make them the happiest? That's a good answer.